and how Zelenskyy briefs Vance and Rubio on Russia's unrealistic demands at Istanbul talks. We will talk about this with political analyst, European Leadership Network UK member Alexandra Filippenko. Alexandra, glad to see you and thank you for joining us.
All good. Thank you for having me.
Alexandra, yes, President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff believes that a phone conversation between Trump and Russian dictator Vladimir Putin on the 19th of May will be very successful. Witkoff stated that the Trump-Putin call will clear up some of the logjam and get us to the place we need to get to. He added, quote, I believe that the president is going to have a successful call. What do you expect from this conversation?
Right there, Steve Witkoff said that President Putin and President Trump understand each other so well. But that doesn't give me that much confidence, to be honest, because I would say that Bloomberg, for example, reported that Putin, according to Bloomberg sources, is absolutely confident that Russia can break through Ukrainian defenses and can take control of Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, the Kherson by the end of 2025. So they can occupy, according to President Putin, they can occupy all the territories that Russia included in its drawn-up constitution. So Putin is confident, according to American sources, not Russian sources, not European sources, not Ukrainian sources. Americans believe that Putin thinks that Russia can break through Ukrainian defenses. So those calls have the only meaning to it. Putin wants to drag some time. Although Russia's military is trained, but massive drone barrages and massive production of drones, also foreign assisted production of drones. We know what's been happening with China, with Iran, and with North Korea, obviously, and all other friends of Russia. So those massive production and foreign assistance is allowing Putin to believe in his maximalist demands. Those demands remain unchanged. Yes, he wants Ukrainian military to withdraw from Russian claimed territories. He wants Ukrainian military to be something like police plus, something just a little bit more than a police station. That's basically demilitarization. That's what President Putin and his cronies have been saying from the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. NATO ban, Crimea recognition, official de jure recognition of Crimea. That are all the demands of Vladimir Putin that didn't change. So those calls, I don't know how much they can help the situation, because for now, according to American sources, Putin is confident that Russia can break through Ukrainian defenses. So this doesn't give me that much optimism, I would say. And those words of Special Envoy Steve Witkoff that maybe there will be a breakthrough. Yes, that would be positive thinking. That would be great if there is a breakthrough. But I don't think that Putin will refuse his demands and have some meaningful concessions, real meaningful concessions that can put an end to the killing of bombardment of Ukrainian territory. He just wants to drag time. He just wants to spend some time talking to President Trump just to gain some time also for himself. And that is what I see in this phone call. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But that's how it looks for me.
Alexandra, I agree with you that Putin wants to drag time, and the Trump envoy refused to comment on Putin's refusal to attend peace talks in Istanbul, but emphasized his belief in the success of the US-Russia conversation. Why did the Trump envoy choose not to comment on Putin's refusal to attend the peace talks in Istanbul? Could the refusal to comment be an indication of ongoing private negotiations between the Trump team and the Russian side? Maybe does the Trump envoy believe that avoiding public criticism of Putin will increase the chances of successful US-Russia dialogue?
I think you are right, because what we are seeing from President Trump, and mainly from his team, is not the fear, but they're trying not to say too harsh words about Vladimir Putin. Because previously, for example, Marco Rubio, State Secretary Marco Rubio, and also right now the advisor, the national security advisor to President Trump, also Marco Rubio has previously said that Putin is a gangster, Putin is a war criminal, and etc., etc. That's what we've heard from Marco Rubio when he was the head of the committee, of international committee in the Senate, and he demanded his counterparts. He demanded, for example, Rex Tillerson, who had the hearing to become the state secretary. He demanded that Rex Tillerson would call Vladimir Putin a war criminal. And right now, what are we hearing from now State Secretary Marco Rubio? We're hearing, let's not communicate through the press. Let's not hold talks through the press. So they're trying not to push too hard. But of course, this refusal to participate in Istanbul, that was a glimpse of hope for one moment when President Trump said that he would participate in those meetings, and there were expectations that he would meet with President Zelensky, maybe a one-on-one meeting of Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump. That would be great, but Donald Trump refused to go when he realized that nothing can be brokered there. Donald Trump doesn't want to be seen as a president who does not make deals happen. Of course, he wanted this deal to happen. If he knew that something could be signed in Istanbul, he would have gone there, of course, because it's an important diplomatic, let's say, point we all know in Ukraine-Russia relations. Yes, it is important. The first direct Ukraine-Russia negotiations in 3+ years. Yes, it ended with no ceasefire, but it's prisoner exchange, 1,000 to 1,000 each person, each individual is extremely important. And the fact that those talks lasted for 2 hours, it doesn't say that there were too many things to talk about. And we all know who Russia sent, this low-level team, Medinsky, not Putin, not even Lavrov, not even Minister of Foreign Affairs. So, of course, those demands of Russia that were again spit out there in Istanbul were non-starter. Of course, non-negotiable, absolutely. So yes, Donald Trump didn't want to go when he realized that nothing can be, no deal can be made there, actually. And for Donald Trump, it is this no-show from Putin is also a show of weakness, because we now see that Putin is kind of afraid to go to a NATO state, even though President Erdogan many times have said that in Turkey he will have no problems at all, that Putin will have no problems at all. But still, we saw this refusal when President Putin himself said that he wants to negotiate, he's ready to negotiate. And Russia, of course, wants peace, nothing else. And it reminds me of a great film, a comedy, a sad comedy, satirical comedy. Yeah, Putin wants peace, a piece of Ukraine. That's what he wants. Not peace as peaceful negotiations. He wants a piece of land. That's what Putin wants. So this slow refusal and refusal to comment on him not going. This, of course, for the American side, this looks like a weakness on the Russian counterpart side, on President Putin's side. But President Trump is saying nothing. He's not commenting on that, even not commenting on that. And he's saying, yes, he's ready for a conversation. The bloodbath must end. That's what President Trump posted in his Truth Social network. So the bloodbath must end. And for that, I need to talk directly to Putin. I need to talk directly to Zelensky. So these direct conversations of President Trump sees himself as a broker of peace, of course. course, the art of the deal. So this is the expectation, the direct communication between Putin and Trump, between Zelensky and Trump. So this is what President Trump tries to negotiate and tries to broker. But while he's doing that, he's not commenting on the refusal of Putin to come to Istanbul. He's not commenting on the way Putin is acting. And even when journalists, like, for example, he had an interview with Fox News, even as journalists are asking him, why don't you see that Putin is dragging time? Don't you see that he's playing you? Trump refuses to say that Putin is playing him, although I think it's quite obvious for everyone, including, for example, the former ambassador of the United States to Ukraine, who said that Putin played everyone. Putin played Trump. Putin played Zelensky. But for now, yes, I absolutely agree with you. In order to negotiate, in order to broker peace, maybe not peace deal, but as President Trump has been saying, just a ceasefire. For now, at least a ceasefire. To broker that, President Trump is not commenting and not saying anything bad about Vladimir Putin.
Conclusion: Putin is a cowardly bunker rat, terrified of everything around him. And the leaders of Britain, France, Germany, and Italy again pressed the need for sanctions against Russia in a call with Donald Trump before the US president's telephone summit call with Vladimir Putin. The British Prime Minister's office said, how significant is Europe's diplomatic influence on the US approach to negotiations with Russia? Could European pressure on Trump to maintain or strengthen sanctions against Russia lead to a more unified Western strategy, or could it expose divisions between the US and Europe?
Well, on the one hand, of course, it exposes differences between the EU approach and the US approach. It exposes differences even within the European Union, because what we know from different sources, from European papers and from media, that there is some kind of tension between France and Italy even. So within this, not the coalition of the willing, but within the EU, there is tension. Giorgia Meloni is not excited about the fact that she was not invited into that coalition of the willing. She was not invited into this group of nations that traveled to Istanbul to talk to Vladimir Zelensky, to support Vladimir Zelensky, to support Ukraine. Although Giorgia Meloni is a prime minister of Italy, and Italy in general has been a great supporter of Ukraine. So even within European allies, there are some tension. And of course, there is tension between European allies, Germany, France, UK, and the United States and President Trump. President Trump was very happy to see those 22 peace points, 22 points that United States were happy to participate in. But those points were offered by the coalition of the willing. So those possible 22 peace points that were supposed to go to the Russian side. But as we know, Vladimir Putin said that he even doesn't want to look at those 22 points that were negotiated by the coalition of the willing and supported by the United States. He didn't even want to look at it. Steve Witkoff was supposed to broker that and was supposed to talk to Putin about that. But no, right now we are seeing that those 22 points were left on the table. No one even looked at it from the Russian side. And European allies, of course, they expect Trump to deliver a way stronger message to Putin if Russia continues to resist peace. And Russia continues to resist peace. Right now, what we are seeing also, this diplomatic outreach by Pope Leo XIV and the meeting in the Vatican. Volodymyr Zelensky was the first foreign leader that met with Pope Leo XIV after he officially became the Pope. And of course, there was this meeting with J.D. Vance, with Secretary of State Rubio, and other European leaders. The Pope reaffirmed its support for Ukraine. And even despite the exhaustion, Volodymyr Zelensky maintained his commitment to real diplomacy, to real conversations, including, of course, the European leaders. And European leaders really want to see Trump doing way, way more. Of course, for example, what we've been seeing from Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of UK, he said that he talked to President Trump prior to his conversation with Putin, Trump's conversation with Putin, and most probably they tried to explain the real situation. Yes, we must understand that the European Union lacks the military capacity, for example, to fully replace the United States if Trump cuts aid. UK arsenals are nearly empty. And really, the European Union needs the United States, help for Ukraine, first of all, and also for now, they need it for their own defenses. And of course, as we've seen from many, many leaders of the European Union, and they've been repeating that, and I'm sure they repeated it to Trump during their conversation prior to Trump's conversation with Putin, that peace at any price is appeasement. And there are horrible historic lessons on the European continent of appeasement. And the same words have been said by the former US ambassador to Ukraine. She resigned, citing Trump's policy of pressuring the victim and not the aggressor, citing Trump's policy of pressuring Ukraine, not Russia. She resigned, and that is a big, big sign, especially after Marco Rubio asked her to stay. So this all are big signals, of course, important signals for President Trump, and the European Union is trying to send the biggest one. But even within the European Union alliance, even within the countries of the European Union, there's a little bit of a misunderstanding. And first of all, I mean between Rome and Paris, between Rome and other countries. Giorgia Meloni was not happy that she was not invited into this group of coalition of the willing.
Also, French President Emmanuel Macron has accused Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni of lying, making personal insults and failing in diplomacy. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz is reportedly working to ease the tensions, according to the Financial Times. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz attempted to ease tensions in the diplomatic row between Rome and Paris, sparked by the exclusion of Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni from a group of European leaders coordinating with the White House on efforts to resolve the war in Ukraine. So we hope that everything will be good. And how do you think, what impact could it have on European unity right now? A few words.
Well, of course, the European Union, like no one else, understands that Putin's game, his geopolitical game, is a border game where he really wants to restore the Soviet Union. He seeks regional hegemony. He aims to turn Ukraine into a failed state dependent on Russia, similar to what we've been seeing in Belarus. He's expanding military influence in Africa by trading with Africa, with Niger, with Mali, and with different other countries. He's trying to leverage Trump's transactional mindset to economic cooperation with different global South countries, formerly known as third world countries. So Europe is seeing everything that Putin is doing. Europe is seeing it so well, and Europe is willing to play this main role and leading role in convincing President Trump to do something and act in a different manner, finally. So maybe they were successful. We'll see it just in a few hours. But of course, Europe is very powerful in its message. Even, absolutely, I agree with you, even with those problems that the European Union is having within itself, it's still very powerful in its message that the United States need to continue supporting Ukraine.
You mentioned Rubio, Zelensky, and J.D. Vance. We remember that Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky has described his meeting with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Rome on Sunday, the 18th of May, as good. And also Zelensky briefed them on the unrealistic conditions put forward by Russia at the Istanbul talks. During the meeting, the parties discussed the talks held in Istanbul. Also, and Zelensky reiterated that Ukraine is ready to be engaged in real diplomacy and is calling for the full and unconditional ceasefire. How important was this meeting? How did the US media and diplomatic community react to the handshake between Zelensky and Vance? And does it change their perception of their relationship, in your opinion?
Of course, there was a sigh of relief. I think I could hear the sigh of relief at reading every article from Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, different outlets, and they all put this photograph of Vladimir Zelensky handshake with J.D. Vance. And finally, it's a sigh of relief because, of course, after that meeting, we all remember this horrible meeting in the Oval Office when J.D. Vance attacked Vladimir Zelensky. That was absolutely horrible and horrifying. Of course, everyone remembers that. So right now, it's a feeling of finally restoring of their let's say, not relationship. I wouldn't say it. I wouldn't call it a relationship, but at least some kind of connection, let's say, because with President Trump, Zelensky met before, they talked, and we've all seen this restoration. Right now, we finally see this restoration with J.D. Vance, and this is, of course, very important. And it's extremely important that Volodymyr Zelensky really goes with real diplomacy. He's committed to real diplomacy, and he continues to call for an unconditional ceasefire, saying that Ukraine is ready for unconditional ceasefire and has been ready for a long time now. And of course, President Zelensky, he continued to, let's say, pinpoint some demands of Putin that are a no-go, and absolutely impossible demands. Vladimir Zelensky calls for meaningful conversations and meaningful concessions from both sides, and those maximalist demands like demilitarization, NATO ban, Crimean recognition are impossible, of course. And I must say that this real diplomacy of Vladimir Zelensky did not go unnoticed. And of course, in the American media and on social networks, also everyone was posting those photographs of a handshake between President of Ukraine and Vice President of the United States. Because now we are seeing that situation has changed. The United States view has changed. So most probably this might be seen as a sign of some kind of a change, not only in their personal connection, let's say, not relationship, but at least some kind of connection, their personal connection, but also that might be seen as a change of approach of the United States to Ukraine. So, and also I think it was very important to see that Marco Rubio, who was present during that meeting, of Vice President Vance and President Zelensky, Marco Rubio, after that meeting, talked to Face the Nation, to CBS Face the Nation, and there he said that there are some unrealistic demands of Russia, some no-starters from Russia. That was important that this interview happened after the meeting with Vladimir Zelensky. And also Marco Rubio outlined, as he did during the phone call with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, outlined that there is a sanctions list. There is a possibility of sanctions. We all know and we all expect that the Senate will take a look at that possibility of a new law of Sanctioning Russia Act of 2025. And Marco Rubio outlined that there is this possibility of sanctions because right now there are 77 co-authors of this bill that is not on the floor yet, but is going to be present soon. And 77 co-authors, you need just 51 to pass this bill to become a law, but now they have 77. So this was outlined by State Secretary, and I think this is a very important sign also maybe of some kind of a change of course, change of what's been happening. And those photographs of J.D. Vance and President Zelensky, of course, made me also say, oh, thank God, finally this happened.
Me too. Alexandra, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated that if there is no progress in ceasefire negotiations with Russia and Ukraine in the near future, the U.S. Senate will pass a new sanctions bill against Russia. When asked by the interviewer whether Russia is deliberately delaying talks, Rubio responded that the United States is assessing whether Russia is genuinely committed to ending hostilities. What specific criteria will the United States use to determine whether Russia is genuinely committed to ending hostilities in Ukraine? This is, of course, a question for Trump, but your opinion. And also about sanctions.
Yes, this is an extremely important point, and also it's important to see that this bill, this sanctions bill, this Sanctioning Russia Act of 2025, possible law, it can become law even if President Trump doesn't want it to become law, because you need only 67 votes to overcome veto of the President of the United States, and right now they have 77 co-authors. They can, in flying colors, they can make this bill a law. So those sanctions are a real possibility if Russia does not act accordingly. And Marco Rubio, he stated that there is a demand for ceasefire on the American side. After his conversation with Sergei Lavrov, he said that Russia is preparing its own list of demands for a ceasefire in Ukraine, and Ukrainian counterparts will have their list of demands for that ceasefire. And Marco Rubio said that Lavrov explained to him that they are going to prepare this document in advance, that they will outline their demands for that would lead to broader negotiations. And right there and then, during this conversation with CBS, Marco Rubio said that finally we will see if those demands include again all the territories of Ukraine, the de jure recognition of Crimea, etc., the demilitarization of Ukraine, the no NATO status of Ukraine, etc., etc. These will be a non-starters. This will show actually that Russia doesn't want to negotiate, just doesn't want, just dragging time. That's it. And of course, remembering of the words by Marco Rubio, he said repeatedly that it's not a matter of months, it's a matter of weeks. Later on, after talks in Paris, leaving Paris, he said it's not a matter of weeks, it's a matter of days. So what we've been hearing from the American side is that right now, the time is now. The time is now. So finally, most probably, those demands for a ceasefire by the Russian side, this outline of demands by the Russian side, maybe it will finally make the United States realize if Russia is wasting time, wasting everybody's time, wasting President Trump's time also, or they're serious about negotiations. So right now, we're seeing this really critical point for Putin, and he will try to drag the time as much as he can, waste time as much as he can, as Marco Rubio said. But finally, this list that the United States demanded from the Russian side, this list for a ceasefire in Ukraine, this list will be prepared by Sergei Lavrov, will be prepared by Russian Foreign Ministry, according to Marco Rubio. So this list will make the United States understand what Russia is doing. And again, coming back to what the sources have been saying, what the sources from the US government, the intelligence sources of the United States have been saying, that Russia is just dragging time. And that's it, just dragging time. Maybe finally, after getting that list from Sergei Lavrov, from Russian Foreign Ministry, maybe this list will make Donald Trump understand that Russia is just wasting his time and he needs to act according to those sanctions. First of all, of course, those 500% sanctions for any country that is trading with Russia, any country that supports Russian aggression, because trading with Russia, according to that text of Lindsey Graham, is supporting Russian aggression. The United States repeatedly warned Russians for 2 months now, for more than 2 months now, that this will happen. If there is no progress, there will be new sanctions. And amid growing support for this bill by Lindsey Graham and Congress just shows that there is real possibility of those sanctions to come into effect. Yes, congressmen previously given time for Russia to respond. The United States are giving time for Russia to respond to this request by President Trump for a ceasefire. And if there is going to be nothing for a settlement of the war in Ukraine, then this will maybe finally give this understanding to the American side that in the end, it's not only Steve Witkoff that has to listen to Kremlin stories, but maybe they will also talk about this history with President Trump. And if there will be no list from Sergei Lavrov, or if there are going to be no starter demands in this list from Sergei Lavrov that Marco Rubio is expecting from him, then maybe finally this will lead to new sanctions and lead to, again, new way of communication with Russia.
We believe we will see these sanctions. Alexandra, it was truly a great pleasure and an enriching experience to have the opportunity to speak with you. Political analyst and European Leadership Network UK member Alexandra Filippenko was with us today. We sincerely thank our YouTube audience for their time, attention and support. Your engagement and feedback mean a great deal to us. We wish you all the best and see you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.